Oh boy, her sister looked surprised for some reason. Like she was witnessing some strange phenomenon. That wasn't like her. Wondering what it was, Aoko tried to stay conscious. Well, we're about to find out. Feebly trying to raise her head, she looked at where Toka was staring. Why did she look like that when she was so close to victory? Starting recording up while there. All good. Who's dead? Who's there? Who's what, where, and Winnie? Beautiful. His heart was beating faster than normal. The fragmented and disturbing images kept returning, and he desperately pushed them to the back of his mind. They were thoughts that shook his resolve. He did his best to follow them away into an unseen corner of his consciousness. But now he could only focus on controlling his breathing and his exertion. Just stay calm, he repeated to himself. He had not stopped for a second since leaving the church, even without giving a thought to what he would do next. So many traffic lights, so many people, so many signs I cannot read for the life of me. It was Christmas. There was no way he could find a taxi. Waiting for one was not an option. It was why he had put his trust in his legs. He dashed through the city streets. He had to find a shorter route than last night. His heart was ready to jump out of his chest, pounding like a hammer against a fireball. He had no intention of giving up yet, but he could not seem to calm himself down. In his precarious condition, even surrender seemed too great of an effort to spare. Visions of horrible outcomes flashed through his mind. No, calm. He needed to stay calm. That was his only weapon. He was painfully aware he was powerless. The best thing he could do was to keep his head on straight. While he wrangled with his mind, his pulse seemed to quicken with every step. Is that Gogo? Jesus. The forest was faintly lit by the moon. Why? That was more than enough on such a bare mountain. He followed the two sets of footprints. Ahead lay a situation he had nothing to do with, just like at the amusement park. Even if you go, there's nothing you can do for them. The only effect her admonishing words had was to hasten his pace. He pushed the ground with his legs even harder, trying to leave his doubt in the kicked-up snow behind him. Of course, he was powerless. The pain in his chest told him so. At best, he would be useless, and at the worst, he would be a liability. He recalled the biting spell placed on him at the church. It did not matter. His body told him he would regret being torn to pieces less than if he did nothing. Not once did his legs fail him as he ran through the woods, though it felt as though his heart could help at any moment. His weakness screamed at him from within, just like back at the amusement park. He was beyond reason for circumstances now. Ultimately, I just want to help her. That was all he really desired. His heart pounded with vigor as he ran through the dark, wintry forest, only wanting a nod at his mind. Not concern for the girls, nor anger towards Doko. The red roses bursting forth from her limbs. screams of agony like childbirth. The harsh reality of something beautiful dying. The nightmare was tenacious. Never again. Never again did he want to see something like that again, if he could help it. Just ahead was the forest clearing. The moonlight shone on the old school building like a spotlight. Once again, those thoughts crept back. They could not bear seeing something like that again. That was why he ran. But if he had to face it a second time, how could he stay calm? With that thought in mind, he arrived at the clearing. Sojuurou. Somehow his frantic breathing, his rising and lowering shoulders stopped. No exhaustion, no inertia, just blankness, like his mind was frozen in time. This was the second time he felt like this. But the nausea and dizziness from the first time. The pathetic whining of the last few weeks. The doubts clouding his mind, they were all gone. Displaced entirely from his mind by an even stronger emotion. His heart pounded with the force of a sledgehammer. There was a primal sound, loud enough to bring him to his senses. Soujuurou stepped into the clearing, letting out a deep but steady exhale. Although his eyes were locked with the blonde-haired boys, his concentration was focused inward. Be calm. Be calm. Are you gonna do the Naruto run on this boy? Every fiber of his being worked to control his breathing. The clearing told the story of Aoko and Alice's crushing defeat. Aoko was lying face up in the snow. Her right leg bright red and crushed to the thigh. Yeah, you don't need to remind me of that part. Her eyes were glazed over, but Soujuurou could tell she was still bravely fighting. Judging by her spluttering, she had taken a hard blow to her chest or back. Soujuurou deduced it was most likely both. Alice's injuries seemed less serious than Aoko's, but she lay motionless on the ground nevertheless. She was lying across from Aoko, face down in the snow, arms out in front, 6,000 points, as though pushing herself up was too painful. Before the old school building stood the figure of the mage she had seen before. Making no mind, Soujuurou began to walk forward. Feeling calmer since arriving at the clearing, he advanced towards Aoko. Aoko did nothing to stop him. No one noticed, but the faintest look of worry flickered in her eyes.
お兄さんもその人たちの仲間?
The child werewolf spoke amicably, confident in his victory, and perhaps also eyeing up a new meal. Soujuurou ignored him and kept walking towards the Aoko. Fine, ignore me. A complete disregard wiped the smile from the boy's face. Still, Soujuurou carried on. The beast's feelings were the last thing on his mind. Once he reached Aoko, he looked down at her with a pained expression on his face. Strangely, he was at a loss for words. After a slight hesitation, all he could manage to say was,
なってないぞ、生徒会長。行く時ぐらい声をかけるものだろう。
His awkward remark was half scolding and half affectionate.
このバカ。
Yes. Despite the pain in her stomach, Aoko was able to throw an insult his way.
安心した。余裕あるじゃないか、青崎。
His voice brightened as if by care bravado. The truth was that she barely had the strength to live. Despite that, Soujuurou looked like he wanted to respond in his usual way. Something like, "See, Aozaki? You should have to die even when someone kills you."
あんた
As soon as she tried to speak, she ran out of breath. Soujuurou heard her loud and clear this time. He might have looked absent-minded, but he knew exactly how dangerous the situation was. Aoko knew because his carefree sounded words did not match his expressionless face.
一体何のつもりで
Before she could say doing, she coughed painfully. Soujuurou pressed his finger to his lips and nodded. Aoko could not quite believe it, but it looked as though Soujuurou had gestured to her to not speak.
だってほら、状況はあの時と一緒だ。
Don't
君
stop
が
at
やられ
things.
たら次はこっちの番なんだろ。だから協力をしに来たんじゃないか。まあ何もできないのもあの時と変わってはいないんだけど。
Aoko did not know what to say. She could only look up at him, amazed and ailed. The werewolf stared at them, visibly frustrated. After all, he believed himself to be the noblest of all creatures. Ignoring him was treason, punishable by death. Had Aoko not been there, he would have sunk his teeth into Soujuurou's neck by now. He was sure he had been intimidating enough. However, his prey did not show any signs of fear. It was hard to imagine, but maybe, just maybe, this god did not view him as a threat.
まあ誰でもいいんだけど筋張った肉は歯ごたえがあっていいし何より食い出がある先にそのお兄さんから始めても構わないよね
Bring it on. The boy wolf called out once again, and once again he is ignored. Still not responding, Soujuurou raised a hand to his nose. Cool, calm, and collected. Paying no mind to the boy, yet keeping an eye on him.
匂うな。
ん
Everyone present was confused. No one seemed to be able to smell anything but him.
へえ何が匂うっていうのかなお兄さん
Bio's voice retained its usual arrogance, but was tinged with impatience. The boy was unable to hide his irritation at being ignored. Finally, Soujuurou turned to face the boy just a short distance from him.
品のない肉の匂いがする。これだから犬は嫌いなんだ。
His voice was filled with disgust and contempt. Soujuurou was mainly speaking to himself. But the werewolf boy had never felt so insulted. Even if that was not Soujurou's intent at all. Huh? In a moment, the wind picked up, perhaps signaling a change in the werewolf's mood. A fiery gale whipped around, carving patterns in the snow.
ソジュロ
Shizuki was about to be killed. Aoko desperately tried to move, but her broken body would not respond. Betraying Soujurou's insult, Alice was unsuccessfully struggling to get to her feet too. In complete contrast, Soujuurou stood there, firmly and unfazed. The little blonde boy's well of patience had run dry.
そうか要するに僕が子供だからって舐めてるんだねお兄さんは
His time playing human was over. Oh, fuck. And each step away transformed. Jesus fucking Christ. He grew larger and larger, golden fur sprouting from his pale flesh. Go to hell. How about that one? I preferred your human form, and when I say cute, and not in a weird sexual way or anything, but he's cute. His mouth grew razor-sharp fangs, his hands grew claws. Yay. Diving for the magical energy in the air, he transformed into a preternatural beast, which in its full form, pretty cool. But when it's been between the human form and the monster form, just send it back to the warehouse, please. A wolf in the shape of a human, anyways.
重化の許しは出していないぞ、ベオ。
Toko yelled at him, but the werewolf did not respond. He only huffed deep breaths of hot air.
そんなバカな話が。
That was all Soujuurou could say in response to the boy's metamorphosis. Such transformation was the stuff of nightmares. What was worse, the beast now towered above him. It was enough to make anybody question reality itself.
驚いた。
Seeing his prey's reaction satisfied the werewolf, and his maw twisted into a satisfied grin. It was a strange one, this guy, but meat was meat. However, the beast's arrogance was short-lived. The prey breathed a sigh of exasperation before speaking.
それじゃあ本当に犬そのものじゃないか。
You could hear a pin drop even in the snow. Aoko, Alice, and Toko were all dumbfounded. Were they really seeing a human not just stare a werewolf down, but insult it to his face? Yeah. I mean, don't forget he lived in the mountains. They simply could not believe it. It was too late. Any trace of the wolf's pride or dignity. I evaded away. The onlookers finally realized that the wolf was serious.
ベオ、殺すな。
Otoko's command fell on deaf ears. The wolf prepared to lunge, his emerald eyes fixed on Soujuurou not 30 feet in front of him. A mere 30 feet? A half second was all he needed. Another half second to bring his claw down and slice his prey from head to toe.
死んだよ、お前。
A roar of joyous and brittle fury echoed far and wide. This is a cool shot. It was the only warning the werewolf gave as he exploded towards Soujuurou. 1 second. A golden blur swept forward in a furious gust, too fast for eyes to follow. In the face of unworldly speed, there was only one thing to do. Soujuurou stepped forward, a silent shadow opposite the beastly silhouette of the incoming werewolf. He needed exactly 3 paces. He bet his entire life on around 3 feet of distance. In the blink of an eye, death would be upon him. Yet, he did not show the slightest indication he intended to avoid the lunging behemoth. The wolf's 4 legs slammed into the ground with earth-shaking fury. His back muscles tensed up so much he seemed barely contained in his frame as he swept a raised paw downward. Soujuurou's small step neatly evaded the claws. He had a different motive. He was merely positioning himself for the next move. His intention was never to avoid anything. From the beginning, his mind was focused on but one thing. One point to aim for. One mind. One breath. He picked the perfect opening in the wolf's torso, the precise microsecond between contraction and relaxation. That one point alone was a crack in the dam of life. He punched the animal with his chest, with his feeble human strength. There was a dull thud and a burst of blood. Oh, that's his hand. Oh, fuck no. Okay, that was the twitch and gore of all soldiers' own. The werewolf's raised claw convulsed. From an insignificant impact, the beast's body was the first to collapse, then his spirit. There was a moment of utter incomprehension. The wolf opened his chest to try and pull air into his lungs. Gasping, he began to topple forward. The senior figure slipped onto his flank. The next blow pierced him like a spear. He's still going with a broken arm. Oh my god. Ignoring his mangled left arm, the sweat whirled around and drove his right elbow into the collapsing werewolf's back. There was a narrow, muffled impact. The second strike penetrated the exact same spot he's giving us a look. What's that guy? He owns Castor. Or practically tries to marry Castor. Yeah, that's the guy I was thinking of. The second strike penetrated the exact same spot the first strike had, crushing the beast's heart. This time, the blood that flew into the air belonged to the gasping wolf. The werewolf fell to the ground, choking on its own blood. It did not get up. It showed no sign of life. But, it was over. There was no remorse, no hesitation in that brief act of violence. The perfect various golden beasts lay still. Felt in a mere 3 seconds. The guilds are, I was about to ask about their reactions, but here we are. Those in person would have bet on this outcome. Holy fuck! His breathing calm, the victor stood over the fallen behemoth's body. That's a pretty cool his face. I'm real sorry for my shitty commentary, but I didn't. Let's find out. Even as the beast lay crumbled in the snow, he could not grasp what had happened. His heart had ruptured, letting the blood flow to his body and brain, leaving him helpless. That much he knew. If he were a normal creature, he would be dead. As it was, this was a trifling inconvenience. Once his heart was repaired, his body would heal as well. It was not as if he had been struck by magecraft exceeding his own mystical nature. This was a little different than a grazed knee. Which is what was so strange. Your heart does not stop from a grazed knee.
思い出さないと。
The werewolf frantically searched his memory. He managed to remember right up until the moment he raised his claws. But what had come after that? Given the right transformation, he knew he could withstand even a cannon blast. How had a puny human dropped him? Wait. Before that, they had to figure out exactly what his opponent did to him. The moment he got in close, yes, he had felt a small impact. The attack was so accurate that it probably only affected his heart. Ridiculous! Even if that was possible, there was no way that alone could stop a werewolf's heart. In the end, no matter how much she thought about it, nothing added up. The answer was out of reach for a werewolf with no knowledge of being backed into a corner, let alone the limits of human skill. Maybe you're just literally weak to everything but magic. Only one thing was certain: he had lost. He tried to piece together the sequence of events. The explosion in his chest, the flash of white. After that, as he was falling over, he took another blow to his back. That was the one that disrupted his heart.
ふざけてる。そんなことで僕が。
You're dead. Could lose? Indeed. It was physically impossible. The boy gnashed his teeth and tensed his body in indignation at this unfair conclusion.
そうだ。こんなのは嘘だ。同族でだって僕を任せる奴はいなかった。こんな痛みもこんな事態も全部嘘だ。不合理に狂っている。だってこの僕が他の生き物に負けるはずが。
Soldier boy. Enough thinking. He was ready. From the ground, he glared at his enemy to his side.
負けるはずが。
The very next moment, an unknown type of pain coursed down his spine. It had eyes. Cold eyes, staring, piercing. Colorless. What kind of freaking training have you went through in those mountains, dude? We better get something out of you later. The moon looked more alive. Its arms were broken. Its inhumanly powerful attack had mangled them beyond recognition. If it was in pain, it would have cried out. But it was silent. Was it ever alive? Those dead eyes. He'd seen eyes like those before. Those eyes without hatred, without joy, without any feeling behind them at all. It was a mindless insect. The werewolf's hair stood on end. What was this creeping chill crawling up his spine? Having never experienced fear, the werewolf did not know what had become of him. Despite countless clashes against other mystics, it had been a human that broke him. He knew beasts even larger than himself. He knew legendary creatures like himself. He did not know this. He'd never met, much less imagined, a human-sized bug. The chill down the werewolf's spine was so vicious it threatened to split him in two. If he moved even an inch, it would crush his skull underfoot. In spite of despair gripping him, the boy paradoxically sensed that his opponent would not move at all. This human would exhibit no further violence. It was a creature, now stoned without no animal instincts. It masqueraded as a human. And a serial killer. The contradiction grated against his heart, his values. A phantom pain born of an unknown emotion. Fear. It wasn't just grating. It was like many needles slowly digging into his heart. This had been his first taste of doubt, of reality. Such contradictions existed in the world, after all. They were irrationalities and questions you do not want to hear the answers to.
痛い
The suppressed pain suddenly flowed through his body like a raging river. This was also a first. Until now, he had always been able to control pain. He had never known what it was like to tremble. An elemental might have even felt sorry for him if it were here to watch. How sad. Born complete, yet lost in the lunacy of the human world.
痛い痛い痛い
His heart had fully regenerated. Howling in mental agony, the beast clutched his own trembling body. Those eyes, those human eyes, they were looking straight through him. And then the boy realized the only reason he was still alive. Even with both arms broken, the human could have finished him off with its legs. But it mattered not. Because his opponent was giving him a taste of his own medicine. This was not revenge for trying to kill him. This was revenge for the wounds he inflicted on the girls. The absurdity of it all made his throat tighten. His breathing was frantic. This human had no sense of self. It had no concern for its own safety when it stood between him and the girls. That must be why it had no hate nor fear, or perhaps even intent to kill him. Indeed, the fact that he was alive had nothing to do with the human's will. The fight was machine-like, so it was judgment. An eye for an eye and nothing more. If the werewolf had killed one of the girls, this exchange would have ended differently.
殺していたら殺されていた
He shuddered at the thought. He had never entertained such a possibility. He had never had to, because he was supposed to be the one exception to that rule. Agony kicked him hard to the gut. No matter domestic, nothing was immune from injury, from decay. The boy finally understood an obvious law of the world. Or rather, he had been taught.
殺されてた間違いなく
Those eyes, they would not stop staring down at him. Retribution was a universal law. He was now painfully aware of that fact. And yet, the one who brought form to this idea was this human. The pain of defeat, the pain in his heart, the pain of comprehending the incomprehensible. Pain. The impossibility of it all had shattered his perfect world. It ate at him, consumed every fiber of his being. The doubt made his head spin. It was too much. Humans were impossible to understand.
殺されてた。殺されてた。殺されてた。
He had not been made to face the death of another, but his own. Unable to cope, he reverted to his human form. Quietly, he shivered like a frightened child in a mother's lap. You wouldn't kill a child, would you? Yeah? Still lying in the snow, Aoko choked in her words, unable to entirely comprehend what had unfolded.
宗十郎、あんた。
She could not hide the trembling in her voice.
何？
And back to normal. Speaking in his usual way, Soujuurou nonchalantly turned towards her. You better explain this, mister. This
何
later.
って今自分が何をしたか分かってんの？
She shouted angrily, as though he had done something wrong. Soujuurou looked surprised, wondering what on earth he had done to upset her. He lowered his gaze back to the wolf boy. Knitting his brow in dismay, Soujuurou finally realized what Aoko was referring to.
心外だな。青崎は分かってると思ってた。
He looked at her in disappointment.
分かってるって何をよ。
Feeling slightly affronted, Aoko responded curtly. Soujuurou sagged.
山じゃ熊はそう珍しいものじゃない。以前確かに言ったじゃないか。
は？
Aoko's jaw dropped. It took her a moment to process what he had just said. She recalled some meaningless conversation or other from who knows when.
君、もしかして俺をバカにしているのか？
That's a she, dude.
まったく。なんで熊を倒すためなんかに修行しなくちゃいけないんだ。
Or maybe she's a dude. Oh, wait. Maybe he's speaking about his master. My brain can comprehend. But whatever. Yes, now he should thought about it, he had spoken about that. You do mention being familiar with large beasts? Oh. That's a lot of speaking.
もしかして俺をバカにしているのか？
That's a lot of speaking. He did mention being familiar with large beasts, yep, and she could not deny that she do heard him utter some anachronistic nonsense about training to deal with them. Which meant he was used to dealing with animals larger than himself. If you do live the sort of life that involved run-ins with wild bears, then a man-wolf might only have been surprising, but not particularly frightening. Aoko hung her head. After all this time, who was it that really made no sense?
参ったわ。あなたの勝ちよ、宗十郎。
Hey. It was hard to tell whether she spoke in admiration or exasperation. Either way, as she slouched in the snow, Aoko spoke quietly enough so only she could hear her words. Alright, Thorn Loser, don't say it out loud. Doka, on the other hand, understood exactly what had transpired. BLA fallen, now just a sobbing boy. And another boy stood over him with two shattered arms. Near fatally wounded, Aoko and Alice still could not stand, but had recovered enough to breathe. As for Toko, she had only a few tricks up her sleeve. Oh, sorry about that. Maybe 3 or 4 more runes at best. The magic rests in her bag were unusable. She could use the remaining magical energy from the field imprisoning her grandfather, but that would be stupid. If she released her grandfather, she would lose ownership of the sacred ground. Failing to defeat Aoko and Alice now would mean starting over from square one, and she could not afford that. This sibling rivalry had to end. Aoko had gambled everything on her surprise attack. Using the fact she was still an Aozaki to infiltrate Misaki's defenses. For 3 years she had labored, selling her work to the association. And she had used 20 years worth of hair to mobilize an army of familiars. It was now or never.
だが、私は失敗した。
She had overestimated the werewolf's power. It should have been enough. Against mages alone, Beowulf by himself would have been enough to ensure complete victory. But things did not always go according to plan. Beowulf's incredible strength was conditional. She knew he was not infallible, so why hadn't she prepared a contingency plan? Her heart as cold as ice, Toko stared at Soujuurou, who stood tall. His arms were a hideous mess. The arm he used to strike Bio head-on barely even resembled an arm. His bones were bent out of shape, his muscles were torn to shreds. To say his arm was simply broken would be a gross understatement, and the fact that he's calm to all this. Streams of crimson ran down his other arm under the white snow. The elbow he drove into Bio's back was likely shattered, and his muscle and tendons torn up to his shoulder. Judging from the state of his arms, it was doubtful he would be able to use them again. Worse than his arms were his left leg, and no doubt his internal organs too. He had used the leg to take the full brunt of Bio's charge. At a glance, it looked fine. But it was now just a useless hunk of meat attached to his torso. His insides were boards. Supporting the weight of Bio had ruptured his spine, causing widespread internal bleeding. Oh my god. Basically, he was a dead man standing. A bird with clipped wings. Living like that would not be living at all. He could barely stand, let alone fight again. So it's in contrast, the collapsed werewolf was unscathed. Only once had he coughed up blood. The majority of the pool of red under the snow was Soujuurou's. A crimson tapestry telling the story of the boy who stood strong and defeated the werewolf.
当然だ。衝撃には反動が伴う。拳を振るうのなら相応の負担がある。まして相手は人狼。走ってくる鉄の壁を真っ向から殴るようなものだ。それを。
Perhaps she had known what would happen. Animals instinctively limit their strength in order to protect their body, compensating for physical weakness with intellect and technique was humanity's forte, and that clash had shown humans at their very best. And yet, it had also been beyond human. He had attacked without concern for his own safety, without self-preservation in mind, He could go beyond human capability. Enough to strike through the steel-like fur of a legendary werewolf. But who would have thought that a beast, able to withstand a shot from a tank, would be felled by a mere human?
いや、違う。ためらうことなく殴りつけたから壊れたのではない。初めからあれは壊すことを前提にしていたな。
He sacrificed his entire body to destroy Bio's heart. Toko felt a chill come over her as she bent over in her head what had transpired. It should have been a nightmarish scene, but she was captivated by that supreme display of physical rationality. From the outside looking in, she had witnessed not an accident, but a rational consequence. In that instant, the boy had put his entire being into piercing Bio's chest. As soon as he laid eyes on Aoko and Alice, he had committed himself fully to the task. He sized Bio up, synchronized his breathing, found his weak point, and calculated the exact position, timing, and distance he would need to hold his ground. He knew what he had to do to win, and did it with everything he had. It had nothing to do with instinct. A wild creature would not have tried to beat something it could not. Only a human would risk his life when faced with the impossible. That contradiction fed his attack. He twisted his body from his heel to his neck to focus his energy. If Bio had simply tried to run Soujuurou down, the werewolf would probably have won. But the beast wanted to rip him to shreds. Or rather, he was baited into doing so. After Bio charged, when he planted his feet, he raised his claw, then swung it downward, putting himself off balance. His pulse was erratic, his movement mild. In that moment, he was vulnerable. That was when Soujuurou made his move. The beast had overwhelming power, but it was sloppy. Whereas the human concentrated all of his meager power into a single point. That was how the human shifted the balance in his favor. The follow-up elbow attack would rupture Bio's heart. It was a graceless second strike. A sloppy blow no different from Bio's. The elbow was only able to penetrate the beast's golden fur because of the first attack to his chest.
あの時点でベオは丸裸にされていた。無敵の人狼がその機能の一切を休止させられた。つまり
The strike was not meant to break, but to disable. All living creatures had weaknesses. No matter how strong the creature, it had weak points and weak moments. But not just physically, but mentally too. At times, they aren't in their best shape. Unable to focus or find motivation. Sickness, a lack of sleep or food, for example, can cause the body's rhythm to go out of sync. For a variety of reasons, intelligent beings risk losing their ability to function properly. Legendary beasts were no exception.
弱点、欠点をつく魔術なら知っているが、全てを投げ打って弱点を生むとはな。
The boy's strike to the heart was not an attempt to kill Bea. It was designed to create a weakness, something that had none. The elbow attack took advantage of that break in Bio's invulnerability.
加えて 笑えることに不意打ちですらない。ベオの神経の伝達速度なら毒が当たった瞬間に感知し対応できる。だがそもそもそれを毒と認識できなければ変形のしようもない。毒ではないものが毒になるなんて落とし穴を誰が教えてやれるものか。
Well, at least now he learned his lesson. She was frustrated to say the least. The boy was totally committed, utterly selfless. He bet his life on that single moment without expecting a single thing in return. That boy had acquired the experience and skill to do such a thing. It was not a miracle of luck, nor a miracle of passion. It was not talent, tenacity, or hatred. Without constant, intense training, no one could destroy their own body on a whim like that.
子供には相手が悪かったようね。
Seeing Bea cowering in the snow, Toko was disappointed in her own lack of foresight. She had used him for his talent alone, ignoring his inexperience. If Bea was not a child, his life experience might have given him the strength to bounce back and devour Soujuurou after regenerating.
ベオを責めるべきか、それとも君を評価すべきなのか。
Toko quietly lifted her hand. Nobody noticed. Standing far away, the boy standing there looked like a hunter from a picture book. He had a slighter build, but that was likely because he intentionally shed any access. Given what she just witnessed, his cluelessness had to be part of an act. The act of a hunter. Jesus Christ! I wish there was something different there. These malices. These are always throwing me off, like really badly. Which I'm sorry, by the way. Really. As she thought to herself, she suddenly remembered the first thing that crossed her mind the first time they spoke.
そうだったな。だが、それは忘れていたかったよ、宗十郎君。
No sooner had she felt a stir of sentiment, she returned to her unshakable resolve. She was raised as the heir to the Aozaki household, taught never to question the morality of her actions. That was why, even now, she knew exactly what she had to do.
でも、よかった。
Soujuurou muttered, unmoving, perhaps because of the pain in his broken arms. He did not look at Aoko. Instead, his gaze was focused on Alice, who was laying prone some way away. Aoko thought he looked lonely.
よかったって何がよ。
She asked, spurring him on. They were mere steps from each other, close enough to touch hands. They'll have fun grabbing that. Their quiet voices carried in the stillness.
私たちが無事だったからなんて言ったら怒るわよ。
She was not joking. Soujuurou turned away from her slightly, shaking his head.
口にするのは3度目だけど、青崎の心配はしていないんだ。いや、さっきはちょっと意識が飛んだようなんだけど。
Well, we can't blame you. You're damaged. He said as an embarrassed smile crossed his face. The first time, he outright fainted, but the second time, his passion pushed the dizziness and nausea aside. He just calmly did what he could as best he could. Nevertheless, no matter how calm he tried to be, deep within festered a very real rage.
じゃあ何が良かったのよ、宗十郎。
Aoko's voice had a slight tinge of annoyance. Sojuurou responded.
だってようやく約束が守れた。そっちだけが約束を守ってるのにこっちは果たせなかっただろ。それがずっと気になっていたんだ。その機会があって本当に良かった。
His relief expressed itself with a small but heartfelt smile. Aoko listened, astonished. For a moment, she could not recall what Primus Sojuurou was talking about. And she remembered what she was talking about, what she had told him all that time ago in the amusement park. Her mind went blank.
あいつをやっつけるのに協力したら俺のことは見逃してくれる？
He proposed a deal, but in the end, he hadn't been of any use. It must have been eating away at him this entire time. Aoko had considered the agreement binding, but only for herself.
あんなどうでもいいことを。
She mattered in disbelief. Sojuurou gave a nod and affirmed with a tiny voice.
約束は自分のために果たすものだって教えてくれたのは青崎だ。だから君が守っている限り俺も守らないといけない。はあ、ずっと俺はそうしたかったんだ。
As if listening to a confessional, Aoko stayed silent. She could not find the words to say anyway. Sojuurou probed the word enigma, taking such a trivial promise so seriously and speaking so sincerely about something so basic. She could not wrap her head around how he had beaten a werewolf, but his personality? That was a true mystery. It was no use trying to figure that out now. To Aoko Aozaki, it was a riddle wrapped in an enigma wrapped in a conundrum.
それじゃあ借りは返したから帳尻はゼロだ。これで貸し借りはなしだぞ、青崎。
Sojuurou said lively, perhaps attempting to break the silence. Normally this would have passed her by, but she saw his kindness for what it was.
貸しがついたのはこっちの方よ。これじゃあどうやって返していいかわからないじゃない。
Aoko grumbled. Sojuurou nodded in happy agreement.
それより青崎の足なんか塞がってるな。もしかしてもう立てるのか？
She shot him a stubborn look as if to say, Here, amazed by her grit, he offered her his right hand. Despite being broken at the elbow, the Aoko looked as sturdy as ever. By all appearances, it was beyond recovery and would be for the rest of his life. Even so, he seemed able to ignore the pain for Aoko's sake.
ほんと、あんたってバカ。
She uttered under her breath, looking up at them. As much as she hated to admit, she could not refuse his hand. Resigning herself, she reached out to Sojuurou. But her hand never reached his. A small bell chimed. A line of wind whipped through the air. It cut through his face like a guillotine. Pieces began to fall. What were those things dropping before her eyes? Aoko could not remember who they belonged to.
そ、中路
That used to be his name, right? The name of whoever lay in the red snow in front of her. Well, the top half, we can call it So, and the bottom half, Jura. So, I guess what we're seeing currently now, or looking at, is So. His face now rested on the ground beneath her chin. The smell of Sera showed at her nostrils. Have fun vomiting, said Soujuurou as he started dying. A river of blood flowed from what used to be a stomach. It happened so fast. Too fast for her mind to process in fact. Her only solace was he probably did not suffer. How could she think that so calmly, especially after what she had witnessed? Her blood boiled at her own stupidity. Which begged the question, how should she treat the one who did this? She had used all her anger on herself. She had none left to give anyone else. But this hatred was hers and hers alone. Her problem was this. Could she muster the emotions from this drought of anger? She was not sure, but the thought of hunting them down made her smile unconsciously in anticipation. Aoko turned to the old school building, where Toko was standing with her arm out in front of her. She had used the same rune magecraft she used against Aoko and Alice, except Soujuurou had no magic crests. Toko's amber eyes were narrowed, staring intensely at the fallen corpse. As to what she might have been feeling, Aoko could not care less. Even if Toko felt regret, Aoko would never forgive her for as long as she drew breath.
やはり君からこうしておくべきだったな。
Okay. We're gonna continue on in the next episode. Holy shit.